Here we are on page 113, Musicking on Soil. Conserving the soil in faith, hope, and love, I look for God's plan in church, in the Bible, and in creation. The history of farming practice in the 20th century can be typified by the history of industrial fertilizer use. Industry-produced fertilizer is made primarily of three nutrients soil needs: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, increasing crop yields. Today, fertilizers add other secondary macronutrients and micronutrients. During the 20th century, gardeners recognized that industrial farming practices were negatively impacting their garden vegetables. Soil became a dead thing that only served to hold plants upright. These gardeners and some industrial-scale farmers revived the practice of composting. Farmers composted for centuries, but the promise of industrial progress led them away from the practice. Compost is an inefficient fertilizer. Compost includes the same three ingredients as fertilizer in smaller quantities, but also, because it is made from decaying matter, includes many others, as well as living organisms, earthworms, bacteria, protozoa, fungi. And compost helps form humus, aerating the soil. Yes, roots breathe air. Conserving soil, the lesson it teaches, is the essential place of diversity in the structural health. Healthy soil requires calcium, copper, boron, and carbon, antinobacteria, and rotifers, water, air, and even squirrels. And healthy organizations require diversity of gender, race, ethnicity, politics, religious perspective. Increased yields may result from using less diverse fertilizers, but these yields are temporary and can lead to soil depletion. Soil requires the informed work of people. People compost. People apply the compost to their gardens and farms. People work to make institutions more diverse and weed them regularly for inequities. The conservative position can be understood as anti-institutional, a position that takes on more complicated significance since the election of Donald J. Trump. Perhaps music educators can learn that our institutions, even our best ones, need to be composted, tilled, watered, and weeded regularly. Sometimes our current institutions need to be discarded. The compost pile turns dead matter into new life. Musicking on soil is dirty work, a place-conscious beginning. Teachers and students listen to the soundscape, where we live, now. People living unsustainably in their local places cannot model global aims, however noble. This is rootless, unjustifiable wishing. We cannot ask others to do what we are unwilling to do. Beginning with institutional skepticism, countless stores have asked consumers to sacrifice an extra $1 at the cash register and then claim to have donated money without denting profit margin. The Nature Conservancy allows oil drilling in the Texas City Prairie Preserve as the critically endangered Atwater prairie chicken disappears. All institutions, however noble, have earned our watchful skepticism. Music educators living on soil begin to hold themselves to higher standards, even while imperfectly accomplishing sustainable living and musicking. Cultivating eco-literate musicers. Eco-literate music pedagogy begins on soil, place-conscious and soundscape-focused. The music educator focuses on creative pedagogies that respect local cultures, histories, and ways of life. However, many of the ecological crises are global. A music teacher in Pennsylvania may never see the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, but is called to understand it, to brainstorm solutions with his or her students, or to write songs. Experiences with local crises, such as fracking, might help Pennsylvanians think about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. While each crisis is unique in some ways, the underlying economic, social, cultural, historical, gendered, and spiritual roots can be identified. Ecological literacy attempts to understand others, especially non-human others, where people do not live. The musics of whales whose waters are polluted by deep water drilling, or polar bears trying to survive the Arctic ice melt, can be an entryway for cultivating ecological literacy. The music of non-Western cultures, those music whose music can embed alternative ways of thinking about people and the environment also cultivate ecological literacy. Questions. There were 4 questions guiding this autoethnography. The first question was, what does it mean to embrace the impulse to teach music for ecological literacy? It seems inevitable that I would theorize eco-literate music pedagogy. The seeds for this were present in my earliest experiences, especially in reflecting on my grandfather working to build parks and my dark night of the soul leading to a more experienced spirituality. However, the lack of ecological ends for music education prompted hesitation. Who am I to theorize something so radically out of step with modern music education praxis? The work of Sadis Coleman and more recent music educators such as Vincent Bates helped me overcome hesitation. The second question was, what is it like to theorize eco-literate music pedagogy? Because of incongruence with modern music education, I returned to my core spiritual beliefs, rooted in Catholic eco-theology, consistent with deep ecology, skeptical of institutions, place conscious, and looking to soil, the book of nature, for wisdom. The third question was, what is learned through enacting this pedagogy? I learned that there are a wide variety of creative pedagogical options afforded by the soundscape, that composers have been inspired by nature's music for centuries, that people have used music for ecological activism, and that these afford opportunities to consider the ecological crises as expressions of an unjust society. The final guiding question was, how do the impulsion, the theorizing, and the enacting relate to one another? Through experiencing the impulsion, the theorizing, and the enacting of eco-literate music pedagogy, I gained insight into my values as a teacher, how music teaching and learning relate to society positively and negatively, what types of practices can help society ameliorate, and the importance of rooted, specific praxis, as well as skepticism towards universalizables. Will music education change? Music education scholars, with some exceptions, Bates, Koza, Morton, have not expressed a music education theory congruent with sustainability or for ecological literacy. Perhaps this is our moment, the early 21st century. There is cause for hope, a reason this book is being published now. Barry suggested humankind is experiencing a new ecological consciousness, facilitating a global scale, a spiritual awakening. Eco-literate music pedagogy provides a model for sustainable teaching praxis as we work against forces of great darkness, currently devastating our common home. Music educators at the forefront of the work are charged to increase ecological consciousness rooted in local places, local histories and ways of knowing, and local challenges to sustainable environment. They are also challenged to see global crises that may not be experienced locally. The current book represents the possible praxis for music education as ecologically literate. It characterizes a philosophy rooted in soil, locally focused, and acknowledges the advantages of diversity. If this philosophy of music education on soil becomes a stimulus for increased eco-literate teaching in school and community music, for instance, general music classes, choir, band, orchestra, and general classes that employ music, it will be successful. If eco-literate music pedagogy inspires other philosophies of music education that provide a clearer path to attending to our ecological crises, it will have accomplished its task. If, however, in 5 or 10 years, music educators and music education scholars continue to ignore the ecological crises, this book will have failed. Can music education change? I believe it must. Will it? That question must suspend, unanswered for the time being. I am hoping. I am listening for resolution. New directions for research. Various research methods can deepen our understanding of eco-literate music pedagogy and a philosophy of music education on soil. Surveys can show how much and what types of eco-literate activities music teachers are currently using. Descriptive case studies can illustrate how music classrooms are incorporating soundscape pedagogy or writing music for ecological activism and can deepen our understanding of pedagogy. Interview studies can spur speculation about ecological issues and invoke music practices that had not previously been considered. Experimental researchers can identify various music teaching and learning techniques and test which ones are more effective at cultivating ecological literacy. Because this book characterizes a new philosophy of music education, much research can be done. The more researchers consider these issues, the more likely a viable eco-literate music pedagogy will be constructed, modified, and enacted. What does a philosophy of music education on soil help us see? To begin with, the current philosophy of music education on soil helps music educators see and address a number of social movements centering on the invitation to live and music sustainably, such as indigenous ecological justice and slowing climate change, waste, and species collapse. This begins with the inclusive definition of the verb music as the intentional experiencing of sound, recognizing the intrinsic value of human and non-human being and musicking. A philosophy of music education on soil is not only a tool for facing the ecological crises, but also a deep-seated conversation, conversion, conservation. By beginning where our profession has been deaf, music education on soil opens us to hear many under-critiqued concerns. These include, but are not limited to, the techno-utopian view, the unsophisticated perspective that new devices are automatically and always good, how universalizables in music methods books, repertoire, and curricula can negatively affect local ways of knowing, and the oppressive nature of institutions such as schools, the music industry, professional organizations, and counter movements. There are no sacred cows because institutions can only improve by being challenged. The value of non-institutionalized human relationships, the value of religious and spiritual traditions, the value of family musicking, often ignored in school music. Music education on soil respects the virtues of soil, such as diversity, longevity, place, patience, nature, intergenerational living, and love. Music education on soil begins by humbling listening to place, to human and non-human beings that have lived sustainably in place for years, decades, centuries, and millennia. Music education on soil emerges as a humble philosophy of specifics and not generalizations. In farming, cultivating and improving clay, soil differs from sandy soil. Plains from mountain, inland from shore, city from suburb from rural. A gardener is likely to take advice from a gardener down the street as from a farming scientist. By taking on the perspective of music education on soil, scholars can move the profession in more ethically good directions by looking downward, below our feet, where virtue is plowed, composted, planted, watered, and, with respect for the Epimethean work of sunshine and time, cultivated, birthed, and grown. People living on soil value long-term, slow, sustainable solutions to today's fast-paced, uprooted, unsustainable challenges. On soil, we are skeptical of techno-fixes to the problems of our technological, industrial, consumerist society generated. In many ways, this is out of step with the quick, fast-paced, ecologically destructive answers society gives us. For instance, a short-term, fast-paced, ecologically destructive fix for climate crisis might involve stratospheric sulfate aerosols. Once done once, they would need to be applied regularly, rapid warming when it stops. They are challenged by many climate scientists as too risky, leading to possible ozone depletion, continued ocean acidification, enhanced acid rain, counteracting the efficiency of solar power, reducing precipitation, and unknown effects because they cannot be tested. A test applying stratospheric sulfate aerosols is actually doing it in the actual environment. See Roebuck 2009. The ecological crises often require us to act less, Epimethean inaction, not more, Promethean action, In the old saying often attributed to Gandhi or Mother Seton, live simply so that others may simply live. Another little reflection. At once, 3 sparrows flee from the bird feeder, detecting the unseen cue. Plop. And a second later, Jay, Jay! The immodest blue jay brooks no company while picking through our sunflower seeds. Listening, I plan next year's garden. In my living room, I leaf through the whole seed catalog. November's planting is better than October's uprooting. Small, capped-off shrub stumps infested the backyard garden area. Removing 5, I reclaimed my newly rented yard. In springtime, I'll remove 2 in the front if I hope to plant a rose shrub or 2. I imagine Madame Hardy or Blanc de Viber. But today, I dream of tomatoes and corn. There is a time for every affair under the heavens. And in Pennsylvania, November is time for planting. Eating local eggs purchased at Nature's Pantry, with cheese from Berkey Creamery, and dried tomatoes from last month's North Atherton Farmers Market. Not much oil went into shipping today's breakfast. Birdsong streaming through the window has me connected in a way streaming music cannot. Sound and stomach interconnect in the experience of soil. I slow down and feel today's soundscape. A present I did nothing to make. Today I live here, cultivating this place and myself in it. And my last poem of the book, on page 119, No Nun. No nun can place St. Francis's bell beneath the roar of engines bold. No nun can hear the carolers sing in city streets where fears take hold. Strong winds defaced our home before, and people's work rebuild it. But people tear down mountains old that no nun can ever replace. No nun can ever replace. Staying undone, a virtue becomes when roots in soil take hold.